Well, welcome to the latest episode in our Growth Accelerator series. For anyone who is new to this, I'm Marina. I'm the head of marketing here at Incendium. And we bring on a number of guests to talk about anything and everything related to B2B growth and how people are navigating a lot of challenges and opportunities in the B2B landscape. So today we have Bennett Moore with us, which is very exciting. Thank you so much for coming on, Bennett. Bennett is the owner and creative director at West Coast, which is an LA-based video production company. I don't know if you want to share anything else about West Coast, but I know we have communicated a number of times about some different video topics and ideas. But very excited to have you on with us today.
Great to be here. Yeah, I think that you covered it. With West Coast, we create videos for organizations, companies, and other production companies that are outsourcing some of their stuff.
Perfect. And one of the things that I think surprised me, or maybe not surprised me, but I will say we are typically in a niche of working with a lot of B2B SaaS companies. It's not too often that we wind up with another like agency adjacent type company, definitely on the creative side working with us. So what was it that kind of got you first interested in doing Outbound? Because that is a little bit of the context of how your relationship with Incendium started. You obviously also are connected to Nate, but
we can get into that. We can not get into that. Whatever you want. So I first got connected with Incendium at the beginning of 2023. West Coast at that point was really just sort of a name on some tax documents and an extension of my freelancing career as a video producer and editor and videographer. And towards the beginning of 2023, I was 3 or 4 years into being a freelancer, and having a network that's composed of people who are just word of mouth can only get you so far. I have great clients that have been paying my bills to that point, but there's a point where at the end of the day, you need to be bringing in more clients for whatever business you're in, including freelance videography, which is what I was really focused on at the time. So I reached out to Nate, the Incendium co-founder, because we have a personal connection. I was looking for general advice about getting clients. I didn't know the word outbound. I wasn't expecting to become so interested in doing sales, but then he sort of talked to me about it. He showed me, he explained what outbound email was. He showed me how Apollo's interface could be used. He showed me how to collect a bunch of people and data for people to reach out to, and then decided that, hey, you know what, this is worth taking West Coast on as a client of Incendium's, essentially. So once I learned a little bit about Outbound, I was like, this is really kind of exciting. It almost feels like this is a secret that I can suddenly get my name and face in front of a whole bunch of people who are actually interested in hearing from me. And then that has really changed my business by extension my life, because that's how I've now gotten several new clients, many of them repeat clients for project after project after project. And it's really made my revenue go way up. It's made just everything go better. And now I'm also using the same skills to sort of transition West Coast from being a successful extension of my freelancing work into being its own small boutique agency that I'm trying to get some clients who are more organizations and businesses and less just other production companies, which is mostly who I was working for at first prior to doing any outbound.
Yeah. So it sounds like you heard about it first, just by reaching out to Nate and having a conversation with him. So it doesn't sound like there's, I guess, a lot of talk about that in your space. I don't know how many other freelancers you're connected to, but I
talk to my friends who are my peers and have similar businesses, and they're like cold email, like that. What do you mean? I've cold emailed people. It doesn't work. And well, I learned some things about it, and that you need to, that it's a numbers game first and foremost, and that you need to be sending a lot of them and you need to be following up, which was a really important key learning. It was like, oh, you can't just email somebody once. Even if you don't hear from them, you have to follow up with them a couple of times to get a response. And so now I tell my friends and peers and people who have similar businesses about how it works, and they're interested. They want to know how they can do it as well and get clients that are good for them and you can get their name and face and business in front of those right people.
Yeah. Did you, I'm curious, since it was a little bit of a unicorn idea to you, did you have any apprehensions about diving into the world of outbound before you actually did? Because I will say, sitting in my seat and having a lot of, clients that come to us with this kind of work, it's pretty common to have some strong objections, especially I would say as more and more people have caught on to what cold email outbound was. I think there was a a heyday before people realized just that you could have people in your inbox who maybe weren't, manually sitting there typing an email to you and hitting send. I think it was easier back in the day, and it's a little bit harder now. More people are familiar with it. And yeah, people get often, they're pretty nervous to dive into it.
I definitely was nervous about being perceived as like a spammer or somebody who's annoying somebody. And so that definitely I was apprehensive about that until I realized that if my audience is carefully selected, then they actually are somebody who wants to hear from me. So as long as my audience is actually, let's say I'm reaching out to video production companies, if I'm reaching out to the people who are in charge of it and the people who are in charge of hiring for it, and I'm just giving them a short little email first and following up 2 or 3 times just with a little bit more information each time, then they actually tend to be glad to get that follow up. And they're not, and sure, I get ignored or I get people just unsubscribe, and obviously that's fine. That's how, part of what makes you not a spammer is that you're actually really you're connecting with people who you can actually offer some value to, and that actually want to hear from you, and that you can actually help them with their business. So that's how I sort of had to overcome my fear that I was maybe annoying somebody.
Yeah, I think you hit on something so important, because I do think that is one of the number one pitfalls that people fall into, is getting being a little sloppy when it comes to targeting. And that being said, you already mentioned it's an outbound is a numbers game, right? So there is a certain amount of are you going to hit a person or two that's not directly within your target buyer? Sure. But when you do targeting responsibly, you're curating a list of people who will reasonably find real value in the service or product that you're offering. And that's a very different conversation, because I think it's a little bit more akin to, or at least outbound done well, is a lot more akin to going to a conference that's within your industry, right? And going into a room, and you're going to connect with some people and you're not going to connect with other people, but everyone in that room is realistically decently interested in your in getting to know you. And you're going to have some of those connections that you say hi, they say hi, you walk away, right? You're going to have some connections that are a little bit more substantive, and you'll have some that turn into a really great conversation. The networking is really effective. And I think that something about outbound email existing in the ether, I think makes it feel like this, I don't know, abstract, scary spam machine, when it's a lot more human. Your cat is welcome to join, by the way.
I'm trying. He really wants to get in on this conversation. He has a lot of strong feelings about outbound email.
Here's the thing. And also, when you do get maybe a less than great outbound response or something, having an animal to just connect with.
Hey, when you're yelling at me, this is who you're yelling at.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. It's you got to strike a balance between the necessary hitting the right number of people, and sometimes you got to email hundreds of people, but also you don't want to dilute that. You got to make sure that all those hundreds of people, best you can, using keywords, job titles, all kinds of specific ways that you're gathering these emails are actually someone who might be valuable. Because that's then you're not wasting your own time, you're not wasting their time. Because I always, I'm conscious of that. I don't want to waste anybody's time. I don't want to annoy anybody. Yeah. But at the same time, it's that balance.
Well, and on the flip side, you mentioned it too. It's not great if you're getting a ton of angry responses from people who want nothing to do with your company, right? That's a waste of your time.
Yeah, it's never fun if it's the one person who's I am a company that makes seatbelts and I don't want anything to do with you. Okay, I don't know why. Maybe your name has some kind of name that sounds like a media production company or something in there.
Right, but the better you're targeting, the less you're going to have your inbox filled with completely useless responses for all parties.
Yeah, and those are pretty rare. Usually, if I'm getting a response, it's oh yeah, tell me more about what you do. And then the next step obviously is to try to set up a face-to-face Zoom kind of meeting and establish personal connection, really say, hey, I'm a real person. I actually am a video producer and I can really provide value to you. And this is once you're talking face-to-face, then you're really sticking with them. And then it's just a matter of connecting on LinkedIn, following up with email every couple of months, stuff like that. Or even in person if you're local to them, which I've done. I've had people who I connected with over Outbound, and then a year later I was hey, you want to get coffee? And then he booked me for a job the next week after that coffee. There's the follow-up is really key after you've made the first connection too.
Yeah, and I think that's a valuable point, because I do think that there's a risk for a lot of people, particularly within the B2B SaaS world, where outbound is, I would say, a much more common channel that people are using. I think people think that they can like do it and put it on autopilot, right? Like completely set it up and then have meetings appear at their doorstep right after. But I think your approach is refreshing in the sense that I think you consider, you seem to consider the follow-up and like even just the creative like ideas of how can I engage, or like remembering, you know, people that might have come across your inbox and not been interested at the time or something. And, you know, doing something a little out of the box, like, you know, meeting up with them in person or doing some sort of like local follow-up or whatever it might be. I think there's a lot of value that can be extracted far above just like the initial you know, like potential for someone to say, yeah, I want to take a meeting with you when I don't know much about you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, and it comes from my video background. The question's always, who's the audience, right? It's the same thing in doing these outbound sales. It's like, who am I trying to reach with my message, whether it's conveyed by video or by outbound email. And then once I have made that connection with them, like yeah, you're right. You got to be creative about how you follow up, because you can only email somebody so many times or whatever. Like it's you got to switch it up. You got to switch up. Like you want to connect with them on LinkedIn. You want to be liking their posts. You want to be doing stuff like that. Just like stay top of mind, not appear to be like desperate either. Like I need my next client so bad. I'm going to follow up with you every month or whatever. But like you just gotta, once you know them, you just gotta be like anybody else, he might, see in your neighborhood. Just your neighborhood is usually digital.
Did you start doing because it sounds like you're doing, outbound across a variety of channels at this point then, right? If you're incorporating LinkedIn and maybe phone calling or whatever, were you always taking a multi-channel approach to your outbound campaigns, or has that kind of evolved over time as you've learned and, changed, or I guess gotten maybe different responses?
There's not too many channels. I don't do phone calls. I don't really tend to answer phone numbers that I don't know. But the outbound email, I'm always doing new rounds of it and trying to reach different types of people. And then the LinkedIn sort of a newer thing. That's sort of, I try to just, that's less for the first outreach and first connection. That's more to just like keep the relationship alive and like stay connected. I know like you could probably get a lot of success just like messaging people on LinkedIn as your first outbound. I mean, I get a lot of those from like inbound, of not inbound clients, but inbound, like people reaching out to me, via LinkedIn and stuff like that. But yeah, really email is the number one for me. Cause at least with my business, that's like how a lot of things run. I don't think, at least in my experience or from the people that I know, I don't think that most people, if I'm reaching out to video production companies, which is most of what I've been doing until the last couple of months, people don't really like getting phone calls. They're really busy, and email is great because you can respond in your own time and then like establish that personal connection later face to face over a Zoom or something that's scheduled, versus like, so if you're calling somebody up who's a production manager and they're like overseeing a dozen editors and videographers and like 8 projects at once, then like they don't have time to talk to me on the phone, but they can answer my second or third follow-up email if they're like, oh yeah, you know what, I am a little understaffed here. I might need editor, videographer, another person to have in the Rolodex on file. So sure, send them a quick email and let's meet.
Right. Well, and I think it's smart too that it's smart that your audience, because I do think that sometimes like we have playbooks that we'll recommend to people, right? Of like, this is kind of how we do outbound. Here's what we would like, here's kind of a play-by-play of what you can expect to do to run an effective outbound campaign. But what those, playbooks are great because people need to start somewhere. But what it doesn't capture is like the unique, personalities that are found in a particular kind of industry, because we work with clients across so many different industries. And there's some where like email's not the place to be. Like LinkedIn is really like where people are active. And we have others where no one is active on LinkedIn. Like it's, like kind of like boomer aged men or something who like are not on their phone or not on LinkedIn, and they're only in their emails. And we have some where like cold calling is super effective as a second follow-up. And there's just like, I think the best outbound campaigns are always going to be ones where you're taking learnings over time, because it's not, you don't have to know everything as soon as you start an outbound campaign. And email for most people, word outbound. Yeah. Right. And most people, like, email is going to be the right place to start. And for most people, I would say it's going to be the right first step, exactly as you've mentioned. And then you can go to some higher impact, like, but lower volume, other channels.
Actually, I have an example for that I recently did. So I've taken a lot of learnings from doing outbound just over email, just with text. And I had the thought, I'm a video producer. What if
Right.
I had a smaller group of people that I had targeted with a actual, like a personalized video? So one group that I've been trying to reach lately, as far as like to try to point my business in this direction, is like aviation and aerospace startups, because a lot of just my video work has happened to involve airplanes and aircraft in some capacity, telling stories about that because of various organizations I've worked with. So I have all this real material that I can show. So I was like, what if I made a list of like 30 people who are, much smaller. Usually with my outbound campaigns, I'm sending a couple hundred at a time at least of just text. So I took these 30 people. I was like, these are a good prospect for somebody I can who might already think that they want some video content to bulk up their company, or like I think I could convince them that they would take value out of that. And so I recorded 30 of these intros. Hey, John. Hey, Mary. I'm Bennett Moore. I did this 30 times. I explained what my company does, and then I cut to a little reel of my best aviation content, all my prettiest airplane shots, and then I came out at the end. It was like, so I've talked a lot about, or I talked to them a lot about just like how I specialize in telling these airplane stories, how it can be used for marketing, obviously, but it can also be used for like operations if they have like they want to do some training content or they want to do like recruitment content. You can really do a whole lot with video. And so I was like, if I want to try to get in on this niche, like it's interesting to me. I'm in Southern California too, which also just has a lot of this type of company. So it's a good place to be for that. And then so I sent out these 30 personalized videos, and I dropped a YouTube link in my email, and then like it automatically previews, like it shows like the video thumbnail in the email. And I made the thumbnail my face doing this, like waving, and then it says like, "Hi, Marina," or whatever, like whatever the name is. And so somebody's like, "Oh, this video is for me." It's not just like, and how is this going to be useful forever with AI being what it is? We'll see. But at this point, it was like this. I might have to do a thing where like, hi, Marina, I'm Bennett. I have 5 fingers. Look, it's real. I'm not AI. But I didn't have to do that yet. So, and I actually had some success with that. So I've been having some conversations with like a flight school. I've been having some conversations with a publication that does like aviation content. And then most excitingly, next week, I have a shoot with a aerospace startup. We're filming in the Mojave Desert.
Cool.
It's I can't talk a whole lot about it, but it's like a experimental aircraft, and they want to make a video about it to show investors and their audience on LinkedIn and stuff like that. So I got some with this new form of outbound, where it's like very specially targeted, and took a lot more work than just writing up some email copy. So I had to record these personalized videos, and I had to edit them. Took a couple days probably, but I'm having conversations with like 5 out of these 30, and one of them has already concretely turned into a shoot. Like that's pretty good return. So that's taught me like, oh, okay, especially once I have this upcoming video to show, if I can target the same group again, so I still have plenty more leads I can work with to go off of it. I think I'll have even more success and really be able to own this niche. That's what I want to do.
I wonder if your outbound like campaigns in general have really benefited from the fact that you like are inherently in a creative role. Because I think I mentioned it before, but so many people do want to put their campaigns on autopilot. And I think what winds up creating successful outbound campaigns over time, because we would say that like any channel is going to deteriorate eventually. You can do it, it's going to peak, and then it's going to start falling. So finding new and interesting ways to, I guess, on a couple of fronts. One, as you continue to like find additional groups of people to reach out to, which you've done by identifying like a niche market where you want to get a foothold. So that's great. Then you also are able to change up the format of like how you're doing outbound, which I think is great because like it's a lot more common. People's inboxes are a lot fuller now than they were a couple of years ago with cold outbound, and finding any kind of way to like disrupt what people are expecting, I think is always going to be the most effective form of marketing, because it's going to like the worst thing you can do is do exactly what everyone is expecting. And you open up an email, we've all seen them come through. It's the most like boring AI written thing that you've ever seen. And it genuinely creates often a negative reaction to the company instead of a positive one or any amount of curiosity. And I think what you've been able to do, part of the reason why we wanted to have you come on here is because you've, I think, run some very successful campaigns that have generated a lot of positive reactions from people, like people perceive value in what you're offering. You're able to find new and creative ways to continue like leveraging your outbound campaigns and find new clients and new revenue. And it's outbound done creatively is not necessarily the most commonly done way to do it, but I think it's the most effective.
Yeah, and there's some things that Incendium helps me with that add a little bit of automation to the mix, like in terms of like I can write my follow-ups ahead of time if no one's gotten back to me, and those send out. So like some of the like steps within it are automated, but yeah, what's not automated is, and what can't be really because authenticity is such a big part of it, is like the initial deciding who the audience I'm targeting is, and deciding what my copy's going to say, and then trying new things like video. So people like, and the reason I did the video outbound was because it's key to my business, and as I say all the time, people like watching videos. It's why I'm able to have this career at all, is because people like watching videos. And so they're gonna retain more information. They're gonna be much more likely to click on a link if it's a thumbnail that says "Hi Marina," than if it's just here, click on this link to look at my demo of my other product or whatever. So I don't know how successful this channel would be in other businesses. I don't know much about other businesses and stuff like that, but it's certainly incorporating different ways to approach people, to make sure they know that I'm a person and that I can actually really help them and provide some value to them is critical to actually getting a good relationship.
I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I think that this could work for like companies across industries. I don't think that it's I think it's convenient that it happens to be your portfolio that you're able to show, but we've even done some experimentation along the same lines of, like using videos of clients, or for Incendium's own outreach, right? Like using video and seeing how does that affect, click rates? How does that affect open rates? Like all of those kinds of
things. It takes a lot of work, so it's a question. But yeah, and so I was only able to do it for 30 people, but eventually, if it's working, that's worth putting in those hours. So
I think that attitude is the right. I think it's the right kind of attitude that allows people to continue successful outbound campaigns over long periods of time, though, because I do think that it's the human nature like default of I'm gonna do something once and it's never gonna change, or it's never going to need to change. And that I think is, I think that's always going to, over time, deteriorate the effectiveness of any marketing campaign.
That was how I felt about word of mouth, connections. When I was trying to grow my network and like get more work as a videographer, editor, et cetera. I was like, oh, I've gotten some great clients who just know me because I used to work with someone who they know, and then like they brought me on and they like me and everything like that, and then they're going to recommend me to other people. That's absolutely a way to get really quality clients, but it's not a way to get a high volume of them. And it also might only, I'm sure that also applies to other industries. But that's also especially a thing in my industry. I think in others it might even be less effective, like to rely on word of mouth, and it's already not super effective in video production. So I needed a new channel. And Incendium was able to help me out immensely with that and really change my entire business to really make it a lot more successful.
That's perfect. Well, I know we've covered a bunch of different topics and ideas and outbound strategies and stuff. But if you were talking to anyone, which it sounds like you do sometimes, if you were talking to someone who is just getting started in outbound for the first time, what are your like main tips or suggestions or things you wish you knew the first time around?
Follow up. You need to follow up with people. You can't just send out one cold email. I follow up at least 3 more times if I don't hear back from somebody. That's number one. Your audience is the most important thing. Your copy is important too, but your audience is more important than your copy. So it's not what you're saying, it's who you're saying it to. And then also, I guess, just like learning whatever tool you're using for outbound. So I use Apollo.io to gather the email addresses that people I'm reaching out to. And so for that, one game changer was realizing I could put in my search criteria, not only like positions and location and stuff like that, it's obvious, but like if you dig in a little deeper, you do like SEO keywords. To find these very specific types of companies. So I was looking aviation startup, aviation technology, aerospace technology, hangar technology, airplane, whatever. Like I really came up with as many keywords as possible. I think that Paul let me put in 99 keywords or something like that. I put them all, I filled it up. I hit my max. And that like every time you get sort of a little rush by seeing like your number of prospects like tick up by a little bit each time as you input one of those keywords that you're like, okay, great. And that's because the numbers game is important. You want to have a lot of prospects. For those prospects, no matter how many you have, it's worthless unless they're actually people who might benefit like from the message you're trying to send out.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, those are my tips: is follow-ups, audience more important than copy, and use SEO keywords when creating your database of people to reach out to.
That's great. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Bennett. It was fun to get to have a conversation and hear how Outbound's been working for you since past year and a half, sounds like.
Yeah, it started in January 23. So coming up closer to 2 years.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for joining us.
It's been great to be here. I had a good time.
Great. And anyone who is joining us live now or watching in the future, we're here on the Growth Accelerator every Thursday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. Next week, we'll be talking about leadership feedback skills with James O'Donnell. So definitely tune in for that. But Bennett, great to have you here. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.